This week on ASDI on Windows, we're going to talk a little bit more about Project Astoria, whether or not the Surface Pro 4 will get LTE, and is there a difference between the cameras on the Lumia 950 and the XL? Stay tuned. When can we expect to see ported Android apps on the Windows Mobile Store? So this question is in regards to Project Astoria, one of the many bridge apps that's coming to Windows 10. Project Astoria is currently in a beta form, so basically if you're a developer you can apply for it and you get early access. That's because Microsoft is still testing it. Now there's a separate issue here, which is some of the recent builds of Windows 10 Mobile, the Android stuff has been removed, and that's gotten some people a little bit worried. I'm not really concerned about that, as after all these are beta tests of the operating system and there may be some issues here and there that Microsoft will work on. But if you go to the bridge page for Project Astoria, it's still up. You can still sign up as a developer for access, so there's no signs that Microsoft is getting rid of this. As to the question, when are we going to actually see apps? Well, obviously the project needs to come out of its beta phase and go full time, and once it actually happens though, it should be pretty quick. Mind you, Project Astoria does not require much program changing in the code for it to work, so developers should be able to get their apps pretty quickly in the store. So I'm looking early 2016 as a possible target for this. Recently, it was announced that Microsoft will control Windows 10 mobile updates. What does it mean, and what difference will it make? Okay, so this question is in regards to a statement Microsoft recently gave to a website regarding the Windows 10 mobile updates, and I think there's a little confusion here. From my perspective, Microsoft has not changed their position on this. They will still work with carriers. Now, the relationship status with Microsoft has had with carriers has changed. For instance, we obviously know Verizon is a no-go right now. What that actually means, though, is I think this relationship with, say, AT&T is for the better. I think they're only going to work with carriers that basically say, we won't stand in your way at these updates. They probably still will have a final word on it, but I think Microsoft is working with carriers to basically streamline this process. After all, Windows 10 and Windows 10 Mobile is basically being sold as Windows as a service. It requires frequent updates. So Microsoft's going to work with carriers who will help them with that vision. What it means for you, well, if you get a 950 or 950 XL, I expect these to be treated much like the Surface tablets, where they will get direct updates from Microsoft, especially if you buy it unlocked. I think Microsoft's going to be really strong in this and pushing out updates. It won't be quite as crazy as the Windows Insider program, where you're going to get a lot of beta builds, but I think you will still see frequent pushing out every few months of a major OS update with new features, much like how we're expecting the November update for Windows 10. So I think it's going to be really good, but I don't think they're over this completely yet, and they're not exactly Apple and can just dictate updates. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think it's going to be a little bit better in the long run. Is Microsoft developing their own Android version, as some publications have stated? So this question is another great example of something that Microsoft has said. I think it's taken a little bit out of context. The gist of the story was Julia Larson-Green said that all options are basically open for Microsoft, and some people took that as a sign that they're going to be working on their own version of Android. There's no actual confirmation that is actually happening. Now, Microsoft does work with Android. They obviously have apps on the Android operating system. They have bought companies that make apps for Android, and obviously they're a big partner there. So it makes sense they're going to have a lot of developers working on Android. It's also totally plausible that they could have a plan B where they do have their own version of Android in the background. And I wouldn't blame them. If I was the CEO of a company, I would be like, if this doesn't work, what are we going to do as a backup? And all things have to be on the table. However, I don't think there's necessarily a big threat right now, but if Microsoft was smart, they would have something in the back in case Windows 10 Mobile does fail. However, I think we still have at least another year before we see what happens. Do you know if the recently updated Facebook beta by Microsoft is the same universal app that they promised? So back at the Windows 10 Devices event in October, Microsoft announced in conjunction with Facebook that they'll be releasing Windows 10 apps as a universal app for Facebook, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram. The question is, the Facebook beta just came out, is that app? And yes, it is. Actually, Joe Belfiore on Twitter confirmed it. I guess in theory, Facebook could make their own app still, but I don't think that's going to happen. Now, this is a little confusing for some people, and I understand why. Most people think that when Facebook says they're going to make an app, it actually means Facebook makes the app. In the real world of app development, this actually rarely happens. What actually does occur is these companies hire basically developers to make the apps for them. You never really learn about those developers, but that's what these professionals do. They come in, they make the app, they get a contract, and they have to maintain it. I actually know a lot of developers who make a lot of these official apps that you see on Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. So that's what's actually happening here. It's just a little bit more transparent. Microsoft is making the apps for Windows 10 Mobile for Facebook, but it's basically a Facebook app. It has their blessing. They work with Facebook directly on it. The only difference here, it says it's made by Microsoft, and that's actually a good thing, at least in theory, because I'd rather have Microsoft work on this than, say, another third-party developer. But yeah, these, by all signs, are the official Windows 10 apps for Facebook. Hopefully we'll see it for mobile and desktop coming soon as well. Once RTM is released for either the PC or phone, is it recommended that you do a fresh install onto the device? Does Microsoft have any suggestions when migrating from Insider to an RTM release? Okay, so this question's a little bit tough. There's always a distinction between the Insiders and RTM releases. If you're on the Insider program, you will get what is called the RTM, the release to manufacturers. They don't actually call that anymore because it's obviously a moving goal line. But let's give an example here of Build 10.2.40. What happens is if you're an Insider, you actually get that first, usually by a couple weeks before it actually goes out to the public. At that point, you can basically say stop insider builds under settings and you'll be stuck at that RTM release. You could, of course, just redo it all and start over and reinstall the operating system, but there's no benefit to that as far as I know. You should basically stay in the operating system, and if you don't want any more insider builds, just hit that stop inside button and that's where you'll be left at. Now, of course, you'll continue to get updates like a normal user would at that point. But if you're on an Insider program, I don't know, I stay on it just because it does work pretty well and you get a lot of cool new features before anyone else. As far as I know, Microsoft doesn't have specific guidelines on this besides what I've just said. Is there a chance that there will be a Surface Pro 4 or Surface Book with built-in LTE? Okay, so this question about LTE is a popular one. I'm actually all for this as well. I have a Surface 3 with LTE. I also had a Surface 2 with LTE, and I use a Lenovo X1 Carbon with LTE, and so I get it. I realize a lot of people out there say, why not just tether your phone? And I'm just not a big fan of that, just because it's going to waste my phone's battery, the phone could get hot, and it causes all sorts of other issues. Plus, just being able to open up the device and being automatically connected is actually a really nice thing. So, regarding the Surface Pro 4, no, I haven't heard that there's going to be an LTE version, and I would have thought that Microsoft would have announced it even if it was just coming in the next few months. So as to why there is no version, from what I understand, LTE devices like that don't actually sell a lot. There may be also questions about how much it can actually jam into the Surface Pro 4. Don't forget, it's very thin, it's very tight in there. They can't just necessarily add a modem without sacrificing something. So there may be some design constraints there as well, we just don't know. But for now, there's no signs that an LTE version of the Surface Pro 4 is coming. Are there any plans, or have you heard anything about a dark colored Surface product? I have not heard that there's anything coming for a darker Surface color. Maybe a Surface Pro 5, they may change it up, but right now it is that sort of magnesium color. And the reason for that is because it's made out of metal. They don't want to use a paint on there because that can obviously quickly scratch and it's going to reveal a different color underneath. They'd have to use something like the Vapor Matte that you use in the Surface 1 and Surface 2. And they had production problems actually using that metal, which is why they switched to a magnesium-based system with the Surface Pro 3 and Surface Pro 4. And that's the reason why it is that color. I suppose some new science stuff can come out and maybe they'll figure out a new color or a new material to use. And so far we haven't seen that, but hopefully with Surface Pro 5, maybe we'll see some new colors. I'm actually a big fan of the current lineup though, so I understand the appeal for black, but it's not necessarily my choice. Do you think that there will be bundle deals for the Lumia 950 from either AT&T or Microsoft? So over the summer, I actually broke the news here that I did hear a deal was going to be made with AT&T, that basically the Lumia 950, there'd be some sort of throw-in package with the Microsoft Band 2. I haven't heard any more information about that. I'll try to find out more, but that is basically what I was hearing, and it's not unprecedented. Microsoft did the Lumia 830 and Fitbit deal on AT&T, and it makes sense that they'd want to push the Microsoft Band 2 this season as well, but we don't have any firm details right now. But sure, Microsoft has done those tie-ins before. They may even do it through their store, through the unlocked version. So something to look out for, but don't necessarily bank on it just yet. Is there ever going to be Windows 10 support for cars? So this is a great question. I've been asked a lot. In fact, we have about 5 questions this time regarding this topic. And it's a very interesting one. As cars become a lot more connected, the question is, where is Microsoft on this? The funny thing is, Microsoft used to have a big role with Windows in a car, and now they no longer do. Instead, Apple and Android are basically taking over. In fact, one of my favorite cars, the Honda Accord, the new version, you can actually choose if you want iOS or Android installed in it, which is pretty crazy. And Microsoft is not on that scene at all. Now, the weird thing here, of course, is Windows 10 can run anywhere, including IoT. So in theory, they should be able to have an automotive version, but they've been very quiet about this. And I honestly do not know why, nor do I have any firm details about it. As someone who's been using their iPhone in the car recently, though, I get it. When you go into certain cars and you plug in an iPhone, it's almost kind of ridiculous and unfair about how much connectivity that thing has with automobiles. It's a real unfair advantage, and I'm hearing a lot of people who are considering a Lumia 950 are really keen on this idea of being able to connect it to their car. Now, of course, you can use Bluetooth and you can use Cortana, but it doesn't really integrate into the dash, which is what people are looking for. I hope Microsoft comes out with something a little bit more firm on this to at least give us a roadmap. But right now, it looks like they're getting left behind, and it's a big story that's just waiting to happen. Which phone camera is better? Is it the Lumia 950 or 950 XL? So this question regards the upcoming Lumia 950, 950 XL. Obviously, there are a lot of differences between these devices, but not too many. There's the processor, there's also the display size. However, the cameras are exactly the same. There's no differences. Now, they look different on the outside, but that housing is just that. It's housing. It's a stylistic preference. I talked to the Lumia camera team. They said they had nothing to do with that design, so that is purely a cosmetic thing. Now, there is one possible area where there could be a difference, and that's in video. So the Snapdragon 810 basically can do some higher end video stuff. However, Windows 10 Mobile can't even do that yet, so that needs to be coded into the system yet. That's probably the only way you're actually going to see a difference between these two, and that's a theoretical change between those. But for actually snapping photos and doing basic video, these cameras and these phones are exactly the same. So that does it for this week's episode. Remember, if you have a question, use hashtag AskDanWindows on Twitter, or use our email askdan@windowscentral.com, and maybe we'll pick yours. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody.